When Marissa Bellamy opened her eyes, the sterile ceiling tiles of West Clayton Regional Hospital were the first things she saw, cold, white, and humming with fluorescent light. The second thing was the strange woman sitting in the chair beside her bed, scrolling on a phone like she was waiting for a dentist appointment. The woman looked up, surprised. "Oh, you're awake," Marissa blinked, confused. "Where's Daniel?" The woman hesitated. "He's not here right now." "Who are you?" "I'm Layla," the woman said. Well, I'm his wife." The room shifted sideways. A shrill beeping started up behind her ear. Nurses rushed in. Everything went white. The next 2 days were filled with beeping monitors, blood pressure checks, and a doctor explaining she'd been in a coma for nearly 3 months following the accident on I-85. A drunk driver had clipped her SUV near the Buckhead exit, sending it spiraling into a median. Her skull had fractured. Her ribs had punctured a lung. "You're lucky to be alive," they said, but luck felt like a cruel joke. Daniel hadn't shown up once. Neither had her children. Her children, Nathan, 17, and Ava, 15. The nurses told her they'd visited twice early on, that they cried, that they seemed to be moving on. On the 4th day, Layla returned, this time with a bouquet of sunflowers and a condescending smile. "Don't strain yourself," she said, placing the flowers in a vase by the window. "Daniel's been overwhelmed. He thought this might be easier if I handled things." "What are you talking about?" Marissa whispered, her throat dry from the feeding tubes. "Well," Layla sat down and smoothed her blouse. "Since there wasn't a clear prognosis, Daniel had to make a few hard choices. The house needed to be signed over for some refinancing. He asked Nathan and Ava to do it. On your behalf, of course. They're old enough now. Emancipation paperwork. It's all legal." Marissa stared at her. "You what?" Layla raised her chin, softening her voice. "You've been through a trauma, Marissa. I'm trying to make this gentle. I live there now. It's our home. Daniel and I got married last month." Her head swam. "My kids wouldn't. They thought you were gonna die. Everyone did. I'm sorry, but they're adjusting. You need to do the same." That night, Marissa asked to see the hospital social worker. The next day, she requested a copy of the property transfer papers. By Friday, she was discharged, on crutches and against medical advice, but she refused to spend one more night in that sterile room while her life was being stolen in real time. Marissa's old neighborhood, Willow Bend, looked like a Pottery Barn commercial. Trimmed hedges, flags on porches, dogs in yards. Her house was lit up like a Christmas tree. A white SUV she didn't recognize sat in the driveway. Daniel's truck was gone. She knocked. The door opened. Ava stood there, looking stunned. "Mom?" Marissa's breath caught. "Baby!" Ava didn't move. Behind her, Nathan appeared in the foyer, taller and broader than she remembered. Both kids looked older, harder, like time had leached something soft out of them. "What's going on?" Marissa said, her voice trembling. Ava glanced back toward the kitchen. "Layla says we shouldn't talk to you." Nathan crossed his arms. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm your mother." "No legal papers say that anymore," he muttered. Marissa staggered backward. "What are you talking about?" Nathan hesitated. "Just for a second." Then he shut the door. The click echoed louder than any scream. That night, Marissa slept on the worn couch of a retired nurse named Patricia, who'd offered her space above a garage in nearby Decatur. It smelled like cedar and old books. It wasn't home, but it was shelter. At 2:14 a.m., she scrolled her phone with shaking fingers, clicking through old contacts, finding her old lawyer's number. A thought crept in, quiet and chilling. Daniel hadn't just given up on her. He'd planned this. She found a series of messages from the day of the accident. Texts from Daniel to someone labeled L. Timestamps minutes before the crash. D. She's on her way. D. Let's hope traffic keeps her a while. L. I have everything ready. Insurance too. D. Good. No turning back now. Her throat tightened. That crash. Was it really an accident? Marissa sat on the floor of Patricia's garage apartment, a dusty journal in her lap. the dim light from the single overhead bulb casting long shadows across the cracked wood paneling. Her phone buzzed with the only call she'd received in weeks that didn't make her sick. Cheryl Donovan, her former attorney and longtime friend. "I've been waiting for this call," Cheryl said without greeting. "Marissa, what the hell happened to you?" "I need help," Marissa said quietly. "Daniel, he took everything." There was a pause. Then, "Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring every piece of paper they left you with, assuming they left anything. This is going to be messy." The next morning, she stood outside a red brick law office in downtown Decatur, half expecting it to disappear like everything else she once trusted. Cheryl looked the same: sharp bob, no-nonsense black blazer, and a "don't mess with me" stare that had terrified more than one opposing counsel. Cheryl led her inside, closed the door, and locked it. "I did some digging," Cheryl said. "Daniel filed for emancipation for both kids back in February. Said you were medically incapacitated and that they needed to manage household decisions. Judge signed it, fast-tracked, no hearing." Marissa blinked. "That's not possible. Ava's only 15. He had a medical note saying she was emotionally mature due to trauma. You were in a coma, so no one challenged it." Marissa swallowed hard. "What about the house?" Cheryl slid a copy of the deed across the table. "Signed over by both kids. Not to Daniel, to Layla Hammond." "She didn't even take his name," Marissa muttered. "She took yours instead." Later that afternoon, unable to resist, Marissa returned to the house on Willow Bend, but not to confront. Not yet. She parked across the street and waited. At 3:07 p.m., the school bus arrived. Ava stepped off, earbuds in, backpack slung over one shoulder. Marissa stepped out, called her name softly. Ava stopped short. Her shoulders tightened. But she didn't run. "5 minutes," Marissa said. Ava sighed and walked over, eyes flicking nervously toward the house. "I know you think I abandoned you," Marissa said, "but I didn't choose any of this. I didn't choose the crash, or the coma, or for you to be manipulated." Ava looked down. "Layla said you weren't coming back, that you were brain dead." "I wasn't," Marissa said, "but Daniel wanted you to believe that, didn't he?" Ava's lips trembled. "We didn't know what to do. He said signing over the house would protect us, that you'd want that." Marissa reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a worn bracelet. Ava's, the one she gave her on her 12th birthday. "Do you remember this?" Ava nodded. "You were scared of the dark back then. I told you this was your protection charm." Her voice cracked. "I never stopped protecting you." Ava's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. "They read your will. Said it left everything to Dad." Marissa froze. "What will?" Cheryl confirmed it an hour later. "It's a fake," she said, snapping photos of the document she pulled from public court filings. "The signature's wrong, and you never notarized a damn thing." But they used it as justification for transferring the accounts and property. "I didn't even have a will." "That's why it worked," Cheryl said. "No trail to compare it to." Marissa's hands curled into fists. "What about the money?" Cheryl leaned forward. "Now that's where things get worse." 3 weeks before the accident, Daniel withdrew $680,000 from their joint investment portfolio. All online transfers. The account had been liquidated without her authorization. Cheryl traced the money to 2 offshore accounts in the Bahamas and Belize, both recently closed. "And get this," Cheryl said, eyes narrowing. "Guess who notarized the power of attorney Daniel used to access those funds?" Marissa didn't breathe. Layla Hammond. That night, a storm rolled across Georgia, thunder cracking like gunfire outside the garage apartment. Marissa couldn't sleep. Instead, she reread the messages she'd found on her phone the night before the accident. Messages Daniel must have tried to delete, but hadn't known were auto-backed up to the cloud. There were more now, deeper in the archive. D. She'll be coming home from her sister's at 5. Timing has to be perfect. L. I've got the bottle in her coffee thermos. Just enough to make her foggy. D. Good. Don't leave a trace. Marissa dropped the phone. They drugged her. They planned the accident. This wasn't just betrayal. This was premeditated. But as she stared into the storm-soaked night, another question chilled her blood. What else had they done that she didn't know yet? Marissa sat alone in the waiting room of Lincoln High School, watching students pass in waves, backpacks slung low, phone screens glowing, voices buzzing with weekend plans. She remembered waiting here before for parent-teacher conferences, clutching Nathan's report cards, proud of his straight A's, convinced he'd be the first in the family to go to college out of state. Now, she wasn't even listed in the school records as his emergency contact. Principal Harris finally stepped out. "Mrs. Bellamy?" She nodded, standing up. "I'm sorry, but without a court order reinstating your guardianship, I can't give you access to his files." "I just want to know if he's okay," she said, her voice cracking. Principal Harris gave a small sigh. "He's doing okay, but he's changed, withdrawn, sometimes angry. I'm guessing things haven't been easy at home?" Marissa offered a bitter smile. "Not the home I left behind." The principal hesitated. "He spends a lot of time with a new counselor, maybe more than we'd expect. Her name is Ms. Cartwright." The name didn't ring a bell. "She's not on the school's permanent staff," Harris added. "But Daniel Bellamy authorized her visits. You might want to look into that." That evening, Marissa sat in Cheryl's car in a Waffle House parking lot outside of Clayton County, watching from a distance, as Layla exited the side door of an unmarked brick building. She wasn't alone. A woman in a dark coat handed her an envelope. Marissa lifted her phone and snapped photos. Cheryl grinned. "That's our girl." "Who is she?" Marissa asked. "I ran a background check on Layla Hammond." Cheryl tapped her tablet screen. "Her name was Layla Merriweather until 5 years ago. She changed it after a plea deal." Marissa's stomach dropped. Layla used to work at a private elder care home in Alabama. A resident accused her of theft. $92,000 vanished from the man's accounts. The DA didn't pursue full charges, lack of evidence, but she was fired and quietly vanished. Resurfaced as Daniel's secretary 6 months later. "So she's done this before." "Yeah," Cheryl said, "but this time she got help." That night, a knock came at Patricia's door. It was Nathan. He stood awkwardly in the rain, hoodie soaked, sneakers muddy. Marissa's breath caught. "Nathan? I can't stay long," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "Come in, please." Inside he paced, never quite meeting her eyes. "You were drugged, weren't you?" he asked. Marissa didn't flinch. "Yes," he nodded. "I thought so." "What do you mean?" He finally looked at her. "The night of the accident, I made the coffee. For you. But I left the kitchen before you drank it. I thought it tasted funny when I took a sip. Dad told me I was imagining it." Her heart dropped. "You didn't know." "I didn't," he snapped. "But I feel like I should have. That's the worst part." She stepped closer. "Nathan, they used you." He nodded slowly. "They told me you were never coming back, said the house needed to be secured so we wouldn't lose it. Ava and I just wanted to survive." "You're surviving in a house built on lies." He finally broke, eyes filling, voice cracking. "I didn't know they were stealing from you. I didn't know they were trying to kill you." Marissa wrapped her arms around him, holding him for the first time in months. He cried into her shoulder, just like he had as a little boy after breaking his first bone. Then he whispered something that changed everything. "Layla has a man living in the basement," she froze. "What man?" "I don't know. She says he's, quote, helping with security. But I saw him yelling at Ava once. She won't talk about it." A chill ran through Marissa's body. "Get Ava out of there," she said. "Tonight, if you can." "I don't know if I can. She doesn't trust me anymore. Not after." He stopped. "Not after what Layla told her." "What did she say?" Nathan wiped his eyes. "She said you tried to leave us when we were little. That you were depressed. That you didn't want us." Marissa's blood boiled. "I fought to keep both of you when your father wanted to send you to boarding school so he could focus on work. I stayed up all night feeding you with cracked ribs after Ava was born. I never left you." Nathan nodded, crying again. "I know that now." As he left, Marissa handed him the bracelet she'd given Ava. "Give this to her. Tell her it means I'm not giving up." After he disappeared into the night, Marissa sat back down and opened the photo she'd taken earlier. The envelope Layla had received from the stranger in the parking lot. There was a logo barely visible on the corner, Midland DNA Diagnostics, a private lab outside of Atlanta. Her hands went cold. A DNA test. Had Layla submitted one on her behalf? And worse, What was she trying to prove? Ava sat cross-legged on the edge of her bed, eyes locked on the glowing screen of her tablet. Layla had started limiting her phone time, saying it was too much stimulation, but this tablet, hidden under a floorboard with a cracked screen, was hers alone. She reread the message Nathan had sent via a secret account. "Meet me at the old barn near Ridgeview. Tonight. Please. Bring the bracelet." She didn't know why it made her fingers tremble. She still wore it, tucked under her hoodie sleeve, the thin braided charm her real mother had given her. She used to think it meant magic. Now it just made her angry. Was Marissa really her mother? Layla's words echoed from the week before. "There were complications after your birth, sweetie." Marissa was already distant by then. Detached. When she found out, well, I guess some women aren't built for motherhood. She left the hospital. "Your dad took care of everything," Ava had asked Daniel once. He hadn't denied it. That silence hurt worse than a slap. But if she wasn't Marissa's daughter, whose was she? And why was Marissa fighting so hard to come back? That night, Ava snuck out through the side door, heart pounding. Layla was in the basement again. Ava could hear the muffled voice of the man she called security. He'd been around a lot lately, fixing things, barking at her to clean up after herself. Daniel wasn't home. Again, she didn't know where he went anymore. Neither did Layla. Or maybe she did, and just wouldn't say. Ava slipped through the backyard fence and into the darkened field behind their property. Her flashlight flickered. The old barn came into view. Nathan stood just inside, hoodie up, face pale. "You came," he said. Ava narrowed her eyes. "Why are you trying to get me to talk to her again?" "Because she didn't leave you. Or me. Or the house," he said. "They took it from her. And we helped." Ava crossed her arms. "You don't know everything." "No," he admitted. "But I know what I saw last night." He handed her a crumpled file. "I broke into the basement." Ava's breath caught. Inside was a printed email chain between Layla and Midland DNA Diagnostics. The subject line, paternity confirmation, Ava Bellamy. She flipped to the second page. Results confirm a 99.9% probability that Ava Bellamy is the biological child of Layla Merriweather and Daniel Bellamy. Ava stared at the paper. "No. That's not... No." Nathan's voice cracked. "They lied to us, Ava. But they lied to you most of all." Meanwhile, Marissa stood outside the house on Willow Bend, parked beneath the shadow of a tall oak. She couldn't see inside the windows, but she recognized the movement of shadows in the basement. Cheryl had traced the lab's courier drop. It led directly to this house. Marissa wasn't just locked out of her home. She was being erased. She stepped out of the car and approached the side gate. A man emerged from the basement door, tall, thick-necked, tattooed across the arms and jaw. He paused mid-cigarette, eyes meeting hers. Marissa froze. He smiled without warmth. "You're not supposed to be here." "Neither are you," she replied calmly. "I work for the family. I am the family." He stepped closer, but before he could say more, headlights flashed down the driveway. Ava and Nathan both running straight toward her. Ava's face was pale, the file clutched in her hand. "She lied," Ava said, voice hoarse. "She said you left me, that I wasn't really yours." Marissa reached for her, heartbreaking. "You are mine. I don't care what a test says." Ava shook her head. "I am yours." She faked it. The test. Nathan found the original. Cheryl checked the lab's records. She bribed a technician to swap the results. Marissa gasped. The man in the driveway advanced. "You kids better come inside now." Marissa stepped in front of them. "Touch them and I'll call the police." The man gave her a cold look. "Try it." But just then, a flash of red and blue filled the night. 2 squad cars pulled into the cul-de-sac. Cheryl stepped out, flashing her private investigator badge. "You're trespassing on private property, sir, and harboring stolen legal documents. Hands behind your back." The man backed away, but it was too late. Officers grabbed him and cuffed him. Marissa turned to Ava, wrapping her arms around her daughter, her real daughter. "I'm sorry," Ava whispered, "for believing her." "No," Marissa said, tears falling freely now. "I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect you. But I'm here now. Later, after the officers had left and Cheryl had returned to her office with the evidence, Marissa, Ava, and Nathan sat in the car together, the engine humming quietly. "I don't know where Dad is," Nathan said, "but Layla does." "Then she's next," Marissa said. "She faked a DNA test. She nearly killed me. She stole my house." She looked at her children. "I want it back." Ava took her hand. "You're going to get it." Layla sat alone at the kitchen island, the gleam of her wedding ring catching the morning light. She stirred her coffee slowly, fingers trembling slightly. Her security man, Griggs, was behind bars now. And worse, the children had turned. Nathan hadn't come home. Ava's room was empty. And Marissa was still breathing. Everything was unraveling. She pulled out her phone and scrolled to the last message from Daniel. "Keep things quiet until I get back. No mistakes." That was 3 days ago. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. She'd burned too many bridges to lose him now. Especially with what she knew. Especially with what she had hidden. Across town, Marissa stood in the dusty shell of her old home. The real one. An unfinished cottage she'd started renovating before Daniel insisted on moving to the suburbs. Cheryl had tracked down the contractor who originally helped install a hidden lockbox inside the walls, one that Daniel never knew about. "I stashed it after the divorce scare in year 7, Marissa explained as Cheryl pried open the drywall behind a built-in bookshelf. "I was naive back then, but I still had instincts." Inside the crevice was a metal case. Marissa opened it with a trembling hand. Inside, several documents, a thumb drive and a black notebook. She flipped through the pages, account numbers, deposit records, a list of offshore wire transfers she didn't recognize. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "We were barely paying off the mortgage." Cheryl pulled the thumb drive and plugged it into her laptop. Her eyes widened. "Marissa, these aren't just bank records. These are bribes. Payouts to judges, city planners, even a name I recognize. Michael Lasker, County Zoning Committee Chair." Marissa blinked. "Daniel was paying him?" "No," Cheryl said. "Layla was. Under a shell LLC called Southbrook Ventures." Marissa sat back. "That was the name on the remodeling permit for our house." "Exactly," Cheryl said grimly. "They weren't just stealing from you. They were laundering money through your home, using it as collateral to build leverage in county politics." Marissa felt the walls closing in. "And that means this goes higher than just Daniel." Meanwhile, Layla sat across from a man in a black windbreaker at a cheap diner outside of Roswell. He slid an envelope across the table. "Your husband's account was flagged. Cayman branch. Withdrawals totaling $2.3 million. Layla's eyes narrowed. "Where is he?" "That's the problem. The last ping came from a chartered boat off the Georgia coast. Then, nothing." She swallowed hard. "You think he ran?" The man hesitated. "Or someone made him disappear." Layla gripped her cup. "That wasn't the plan." The man chuckled dryly. "Plans change." She shoved the envelope back. "I need protection." He stood, tossing a burner phone onto the table. "Keep it close. If you see anyone from Lasker's circle, don't speak their name. Not unless you want to end up like Daniel." That evening, Marissa knocked on the door of the judge who'd approved the guardianship transfer during her coma, Judge Evelyn Hawthorne. The woman opened the door wearing a silk robe, her expression tight. "I'm not allowed to discuss active cases outside chambers." "This isn't about a case," Marissa interrupted, holding up a copy of the wire transfer Cheryl had decrypted. "This is about you taking a $50,000 payment 2 weeks before you ruled I was medically unfit." Judge Hawthorne's face drained of color. "I have your signature, and I have the timeline. If you don't want this to go public, you'll help me reverse every order you pushed through while I was unconscious, including the deed transfer." "I didn't know," the judge whispered. "You didn't want to know," Marissa snapped. "Now make it right." Later that night, Ava found something strange in the crawl space under the master bedroom of the current house. What had been her room, a floorboard shifted when she stepped on it. Curious, she peeled it back. Inside was a locked black binder marked MB Confidential. She froze. Marissa Bellamy. She brought it to Marissa the next morning. Together they opened it. Inside were photos. Grainy shots of Marissa at the hospital. In a wheelchair. Sedated. One picture showed her signature on a consent form she'd never seen, authorizing do not resuscitate orders. This, Marissa's hands shook, this isn't my signature. I think someone forged it, Ava whispered. And they kept records, photos, proof. Cheryl stared at it, speechless. You weren't just pushed aside, she said. You were targeted. Marissa's face turned to stone. Then it's time I stopped playing defense. Meanwhile, Layla poured a glass of wine and stood before the mirror, trying to steady her nerves, but her reflection flickered, something off in the glass. She turned quickly. The envelope from the diner sat open on the table. Inside, a USB drive she hadn't noticed before. She plugged it into Daniel's laptop. There was only one file. A video. It opened on a beach, waves crashing. Then, Daniel appeared. Bruised, tied to a chair. He looked directly into the camera. If you're watching this, he said, they got to me. Layla's breath hitched. They know about Southbrook, about the zoning deals, about the shell accounts. He coughed hard. Blood flecked his lip. And they know you're the one who planned it all. The video cut to static. Layla stood frozen, wine glass falling to the floor, shattering. Layla stood in the wreckage of the living room, broken wine glass still glinting near her feet. The video of Daniel played on loop in her mind. Tied, bloodied, calling her out. The wine bottle was still in her hand, clutched tight. How much did Marissa know now? Had she seen the video? Had the kids? She couldn't let the past catch up. Not now. Not when she was this close to flipping the deed on the other property. The lake house Marissa never knew Daniel bought with her retirement funds. That place was her real escape plan. Not this suburban facade. Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. We have the files. You have 24 hours to return what you stole, or everyone sees the video. Layla's vision tunneled. This wasn't just about Marissa anymore. This was blackmail. Across town, Marissa was back inside the walls of her stolen home, but not through the front door. Cheryl had discovered a maintenance entrance left unsealed during the last remodel. That's how they slipped in, Marissa, Ava, and Cheryl, under the cloak of night, flashlights in hand. The plan wasn't to confront. Not yet. It was to document, secure proof, seal her legal case before Layla could buy another ruling. They were in the basement when Ava paused at a filing cabinet she didn't recognize. This wasn't here before. Inside were dozens of labeled folders. Project Willow, Patient Transfer, MB, Consent Override Protocols. What is this? Ava whispered. Cheryl's eyes narrowed. Medical records. From when you were in the coma. Marissa flipped through one. Her vitals. Prescriptions she never approved. A note scribbled in the margin, terminate care if assets are reassigned. They were waiting until the house and money were legally Layla's, Cheryl muttered. Then they were going to pull the plug. Marissa staggered back. They really wanted me dead. Cheryl pulled out her phone. We need to take all of this to Judge Hawthorne. But Ava wasn't listening. She was staring at the corner of the room, where something metallic gleamed under a dusty tarp. Mom, Marissa turned. A surveillance console. Still active. Time-stamped footage looping across 4 monitors. She stepped forward. One screen showed her bedroom from 6 weeks ago. Another showed the kids' rooms. Her hospital room. Even Cheryl's office. They've been watching all of us, Cheryl said, even after Daniel disappeared. Marissa's face hardened. This isn't just fraud. It's premeditated. The next morning, Layla stood in a sleek lawyer's office downtown, voice brittle with anger. I want the property rights locked. Any attempt to reverse the deed, I want flagged. The lawyer, a trim, bespectacled man, hesitated. That may no longer be possible. Excuse me? He slid a document across the table. Judge Hawthorne just submitted an emergency injunction, overriding all transfers made during your husband's power of attorney. A fraud investigation is now formally open. Layla's mouth opened, then closed. The walls were closing in. She pulled out her burner phone and called a number she hadn't used in a decade. A woman answered, Russian accent. Cool. Do you remember what I did for you in Chicago? Layla asked. I need something like that again. There was a long pause. Then the woman replied, How permanent? Layla smiled coldly. Let's call it irreversible. Back at Cheryl's office, The pieces were clicking into place. Southbrook Ventures isn't just about money laundering, Cheryl explained, pointing to a flowchart. It's part of a coordinated real estate scam, buying undervalued homes from vulnerable owners, flipping them through forged legal channels, and using those assets to secure zoning approvals. Marissa frowned. And Daniel was the front man, Cheryl nodded. But Layla was the one building the system, and the bank records show her name on the transfer that started it all, the signature that released your medical authority. Marissa's hand clenched into a fist. She signed away my life. That night, a fire broke out at the storage unit where Cheryl had hidden all the physical files. The news reported it as an accident. Marissa knew better. They'd been followed. Everything physical, gone. But not everything digital. That's when Ava stepped forward, holding up a flash drive. I copied the footage from the surveillance console. Everything. Marissa took it, tears brimming. You saved this, she whispered. Ava looked down. You would have done the same. Meanwhile, a body washed ashore near the Georgia coast. Face mangled, hands tied, but the tattoo matched. Daniel Bellamy. Marissa got the call the next morning. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply said, "Now it's her turn." Marissa stood on the pier, wind slicing through her coat, eyes fixed on the coroner's van pulling away. Daniel was officially dead. No more shadows, no more unanswered texts. Just a corpse with matching dental records, washed up with concrete in his shoes. But what should have been closure only opened a deeper wound. He died without facing her, without explaining why. And worse, he died before she could ask the question that haunted her since the DNA envelope arrived. Which of her children wasn't hers? She hadn't told Ava or Nathan. Not yet. Back at Cheryl's office, Ava paced nervously while Marissa held the DNA results in her lap. The test had been rerun, verified twice by independent labs. Ava was hers, which meant Marissa's hands trembled as she opened the second file. Nathan Bellamy, 0% maternal match. Cheryl looked up slowly. That's not just a mistake, that's intentional deception. Marissa's throat closed. But he was born in the hospital. I gave birth to him, I remember it. Cheryl hesitated. There were rumors. Around that time, a nurse at the maternity ward went missing, quietly. There was even an internal audit about newborn mix-ups, though it was hushed. Marissa stared at the report in silence. Was Nathan ever hers to begin with? Or was he always Layla's? Meanwhile, Layla sat across from a sharp-featured young man in a leather jacket. Nathan's file? She asked. He handed it over silently. She flipped through it, her eyes gleaming. Hospital records, birth documents, bribed nurses' statements. All falsified. She had orchestrated it from the start. She had planted Nathan into Marissa's life long before the affair with Daniel even began. Long before she even worked for him. She snapped the file closed. It's time, she said coolly. He knows who his real mother is. Now let's see what side he's really on. That evening, Marissa walked into her dimly lit apartment to find Nathan sitting at the table. Alone. I got your message, he said flatly. She set her purse down slowly. You've barely spoken to me for weeks, he nodded. Because I didn't know what to say. Until now. He slid a manila folder across the table. It was full of photos. Layla, in a prison jumpsuit. Booking reports from 12 years ago under a different name. Elena Hart. Fraud. Grand larceny. Identity theft. She lied about everything, he said, voice shaking. And I helped her. I gave her the house. I told her where you kept documents. His voice broke. I thought she loved me. Marissa's voice was low. She does. In her own twisted way. Nathan's eyes met hers. I think she's my mother. Silence. She didn't deny it. She couldn't. He looked down at the table. What does that make me? Marissa came around the table and placed a hand on his shoulder. It makes you my son, Nathan. Maybe not by blood. But I raised you. I held your hand when you were sick. I listened to your nightmares. That doesn't vanish because of DNA. Nathan's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I know. The next morning, Layla made her final move. She walked into City Hall wearing all black, heels echoing like gunshots down the corridor. In her hand, a forged death certificate. Marissa Bellamy, deceased. The clerk on duty barely looked up. The death certificate from the hospital hasn't been entered into your zoning files yet, Layla said smoothly. I need to fast-track the property reassignment. As the clerk typed, Layla scanned the room. No cameras. Perfect. She signed the documents, smiling. But as she turned to leave, a voice stopped her cold. Going somewhere with my name? Marissa stepped into view, flanked by Cheryl and two sheriff's deputies. Layla froze. Daniel forged a power of attorney. You used it to falsify my death. That's identity theft, conspiracy, and a dozen other charges, Marissa said. But that's not the best part. She nodded to the deputies. Tell her. One deputy held up a warrant. We have footage of you orchestrating Daniel's embezzlement and aiding in bribery of elected officials. You're under arrest. Layla tried to smile. You think I didn't prepare for this? She reached into her coat pocket, and suddenly the lobby was filled with screams as something small and black hit the ground. Gas canister. Smoke filled the room. By the time the deputies cleared it, Layla was gone. That night, Cheryl checked the security feed from her office. Someone had been inside, drawers open, papers missing, a message on her laptop screen. You don't understand what you started. Marissa is only the beginning. Cheryl turned to Marissa, pale. This wasn't just about money, or Daniel, or even you. Marissa's blood ran cold. Then what is it about? Ava answered from the doorway. Layla's building something bigger. She has allies. And a list. She held up a flash drive. I found this in her hidden safe. Names, photos, payoffs. Some of the town's most powerful people, including the mayor. Marissa stared at the screen. Then we burn it all down. Marissa hadn't slept in 2 days. Her hands trembled as she loaded the last file onto the encrypted server. Every name on the list, every judge, city planner, accountant, and realtor who had profited from Layla's real estate scheme was about to be exposed. They had bought up the homes of the sick, the comatose, the elderly, and the desperate, then funneled the profits through shell companies Layla built using Daniel's name. And it all began with her house. She hit send. The files were scheduled to go public in 4 hours, enough time for the storm to start. At 8:03 a.m., Mayor Crandall was in the middle of a televised press conference about the town's revitalization project when his assistant handed him a phone. His face turned white. Within minutes, headlines were flashing. Millions stolen from families in estate fraud. Ring, mayor, city officials implicated, secretary-turned-mogul, Layla Hart, wanted for arson and attempted murder exclusive. Victim Marissa Bellamy breaks her silence. Layla watched from a motel room in Louisiana, rage boiling. She still had one move left, a kill switch. Buried deep inside the financial records was a clause. If the investigation hit public servers, a series of bank transfers would automatically release $10 million in offshore accounts to her name and Nathan's. He was her ace now, the son she'd stolen, the son she raised, in secret, through bribes and bedtime stories told from a distance. She texted him, "You're either mine or you're hers. The money's real. Come with me. Tonight. Or it all burns." Nathan stared at the message. He was in Marissa's apartment, sitting across from Ava, who didn't know what to say. "I don't want the money," he said, "but I want to know who I am." Ava leaned forward. "You already know. You chose us. You stayed." Nathan nodded slowly. "Then I need to finish what I started." Marissa stepped onto the steps of City Hall later that afternoon, just as crowds gathered. Reporters shouted her name. Cheryl stood at her side. Ava and Nathan flanked her. She cleared her throat. "My name is Marissa Bellamy. 3 months ago I was in a coma. When I woke up I learned my home was stolen, my identity nearly erased. But this isn't just about me. This is about corruption, decades deep, and the woman who almost got away with it." She turned to the cameras. "Her name is Layla Hart. But she's also Elena Hart. She's a convicted felon. And she manipulated my family, my assets, and the entire town's justice system." She paused. "But now, she's out of moves." An hour later, at a Greyhound station in Baton Rouge, Layla boarded a bus wearing a wig and sunglasses. Her burner phone buzzed again. "Nathan. I'll come. Alone. 9 p.m. Tell me where. She smiled. She still had him. But 9 p.m. didn't bring Nathan. It brought federal agents. And Marissa. Standing outside the station entrance, eyes locked on Layla as she was cuffed to the concrete. You used my son, Marissa said, voice low. You stole my life, my name, my family. Layla sneered. And you still needed help to win. Weak as ever. Marissa leaned down. I didn't win by being strong, I won by surviving. Layla's eyes flicked toward the bus and froze. Ava was on board, holding her phone up, recording every word. Later, as Layla sat in a holding cell, she watched the video go viral. Her smirk faded as comments poured in. How did she fool everyone for so long? That poor woman, Marissa is a hero. Wait, wasn't Layla working with the mayor? Then came the news alert. Layla Hart officially charged with conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, bribery, wire transfers, and impersonation. Bail denied. 2 weeks later, Marissa stepped back onto her old front porch. It smelled like fresh paint and lavender, the same scent she used to spray on laundry day. The judge had returned the house to her ownership, and with Cheryl's help, the renovation would begin again, this time with new locks, new light, and no shadows left inside. Nathan carried a box of photo albums inside. Ava followed with takeout. They laughed. It wasn't perfect, but it was family. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Marissa pulled out one final envelope. A letter from a woman named Marissa Bellamy, Daniel's sister, estranged and long gone. Inside, a photo. Marissa stared at it. Daniel, Layla, Nathan. In a hospital room. Dated a week before Nathan's supposed birth. And scrawled on the back, for Elena, our secret, always. Clarissa's note was simple. I thought you should know. You were never crazy. You were always right. He was hers. From the start. Marissa folded the photo, then dropped it into the fire. She didn't need proof anymore. She had peace. And this time, no one could take it from her.